Apparently, Kaitlin Bennet has a video called Goodbye YouTube. Now, despite the fact that there are videos uploaded after this video came out, I am curious to see what the content of this video is. Because, well, at the end of the day, Fashy McPoopants always gives us great things to engage in commentary on. Let's see here.
YouTube, as we know it, is now completely dead. And if you support Donald Trump, your days here are now numbered.
YouTube is now dead. And if you support Trump, your days are now numbered. That's... okay, sure. Let's continue, I guess.
To us here on the right, big tech censorship isn't anything new. For years now, they've been targeting conservatives and making those of us still left on here have to censor ourselves just to maintain a social media presence. They tried to be subtle about it for a while, but once the election came around, they took the mask off.
They took the mask off. Kaitlin, I hate to tell you, this is a wonderful freeze frame, by the way. This is an amazing freeze frame. But I hate to tell you, Kaitlin, that at the end of the day, big tech censors all of us, okay? Do you know who big tech doesn't want to win? The left. Do you want to know why? Because the left, not liberals, the left, leftists, are generally anti-large corporation. We are generally pro-workers' rights. We are, generally speaking, anti-CEO. And if there's one thing big tech wants to keep, it is workers who are underpaid. It is CEOs having a lot of power and a lot of money. At the end of the day, Kaitlin, the reason that conservatives get banned off of YouTube is generally because they engage in terms of service violations. This happens to lefties too. The amount of times that I've seen a conservative content creator like a Steven Crowder or someone go, "Oh my God, my video was demonetized by YouTube big tech censorship. It's all bad. Don't they love guns and freedom?" And then you have to ask yourself, well, hold on, wait a minute. I got a question. What would you say if I was having the same thing happen to me? Because every few videos, I'm generally good about doing the things that YouTube wants me to do to not get demonetized, but it happens often enough that my videos get demonetized too. And I know that other content creators who are left-leaning on this platform have it happen as well. Xander Hall does, Vosh does, Jimmy Snow does, Telltale does. All of us deal with big tech, Alphabet, YouTube, Google, doing the demonetization thing, doing the thing that actively lowers the amount of people that will watch and engage with our content, because when you have a video that's demonetized, the algorithm does not pick it up as well. Videos that get remonetized generally start performing better after their monetization. This happens to everyone, Kaitlin. Everyone. And yet, it is when conservatives are getting attacked by it, that is when she holds issue.
And went full-blown communist, hiding dozens of President Trump's tweets.
Wait, hold on. Did you?
Full-blown communist. Once the election came around, they took the mask off and went full-blown communist.
Kaitlin, do you know what communism is? Communism is a stateless, classless, generally moneyless society. What about big tech is communist? They literally enforce a rigid hierarchy. Literally engaging in the doings of class. How is... and an argument can be made that many of the largest corporations are slowly, through lobbying, becoming pseudo-oligarchs. At what point is any of that communist, Kaitlin? No workers own their means of production, though that would be socialism. There is no workers' rights here. It's literally, this is the free market. This is the end result of the free market. When you have an unregulated free market, you inevitably end up granting undue power to large corporations to do things like deplatform you when they control the most ubiquitous platforms. This is the direct end result of conservative economic policies. This is what happens when conservative economic policies are followed through. Kaitlin, maybe, just maybe, a mirror would be the best place for you to look if you are trying to figure out where all the censorship is coming from. Remember, it's people like Richard Spencer who have argued that they are pro-free speech in name only. They don't actually care about free speech.
Hiding dozens of President Trump's tweets, labeling anything as misinformation,
1984 is when Donald Trump can't tweet.
And fact-checking anything that challenges mainstream media narratives.
So, you do understand that Fox News is part of the mainstream media, and CNN is as well. And both of them have engaged in blatant falsehoods from time to time. It's not just the mainstream media narrative. Generally speaking, when you are fact-checking, you are trying to determine if something is true as it corresponds to ontology, not true as it corresponds to what the news anchor on Fox News said last night. I don't know if you actually understand that, Kaitlin. I don't know if that idea has just slipped by you, but apparently it has. Apparently she doesn't know what an actual fact check is. Then again, this is the same person who has engaged in Holocaust denialism, so I don't think Kaitlin knows what a fact is.
But what YouTube just announced is so much worse than any type of censorship we've seen before. They are now going to completely erase any content that challenges or questions the integrity of the 2020 election, and they boast having already banned thousands of accounts. According to YouTube's latest policy update, quote, "Since September, we've terminated over 8,000 channels and thousands of harmful and misleading elections-related videos for violating our existing policies."
Oh, darn! You mean the policies in the terms of service that were there that those channels agreed to and then violated? I don't know how to tell you this, but YouTube isn't state-owned. YouTube is not a right. It's a privilege. For me, it's a job. For you, it is too. YouTube is not that thing that you just have as a default because you were born into society. That's supposed to be stuff like healthcare. But no, YouTube is a private organization, a subsidiary of Google, a subsidiary of the Alphabet Corporation. You agreed to these terms when you hopped on YouTube, and everybody else there did too. And when they violated those terms, like an at-will employment status, they were terminated. These are things that are bad in some form or fashion, in the regard that having ubiquitous power over information is bad. But it's not bad from a conservative point of view. From a conservative point of view, this isn't a bug. This is a feature. This is a feature of having a large mega corporation having unchecked power. This is what you fought for.
The policy update continues. We also work to make sure that the line between what is removed and what is allowed is drawn in the right.
I invite you to finish your food.
Finish my food?
Yeah, finish making your food.
Not in the recording part. Give me a second.
Okay. I'll never cook for you again.
You'll never cook for me again? That is unfortunate. But
place. Our policies prohibit misleading viewers about where and how to vote. We also disallow content alleging widespread fraud or errors change the outcome of a historical U.S. presidential election. However, in some cases, that has meant allowing controversial views on the outcome or process of counting votes of a current election as election officials have worked to finalize counts. And here's where things get really spooky. We will start removing any piece of content uploaded today or anytime after that misleads people by alleging that widespread fraud or errors change the outcome of the 2020 US presidential election.
How's that spooky? That's literally just saying, hey, we don't like lies. They don't like lies. And specifically lies that are shown to be directly harmful. Because, consider this for a moment. If everybody in the United States suddenly, all at the same time, decided that democracy didn't work, what would happen? Well, more democracy wouldn't happen. That's not what would happen after that. These things are harmful. They cause harm. They are a problem. There's not really an issue with YouTube having a policy saying that they will remove stuff like this. Now, will they overreach in their attempts to control? Sure, they always do. But this, in general, is not a problem.
In line with our approach towards historical US presidential elections. For example, we will remove videos claiming that a presidential candidate won the election due to widespread software glitches or counting errors.
Yeah. Of course, because those things have been, for the most part, debunked. So in Georgia, we found that there were, in fact, some errors in the way that votes were counted, and we found 100, 200, something like that. And strangely enough, those votes weren't for Biden. Those votes were for Trump. Like, it ended up being in Trump's favor when things were checked, but it was not in Trump's favor so much that it would have changed anything. Like, imagine if that error existed in every state. So there were 200 or 300 votes found in every state, and that was your margin for error. For one, that's an astronomically good margin for error. Two, more importantly, it wouldn't change shit. 50 states times 300 or 400 only gets us to a handful of thousands. We don't actually come to the 6 million vote gap between Biden and Trump. Not only do we not come to that 6 million vote gap, we don't get anywhere near the amount required for the Electoral College to be turned over. It's one thing to say that there were errors in the voting process. I am perfectly willing to accept that. It is another thing entirely to say that there were enough errors to have changed the outcome of the election. And currently, that does not seem to be the case. There's a reason the Supreme Court the Supreme Court, mind you, the Supreme Court that Donald Trump mostly appointed. It is a mostly Republican Supreme Court. Many of the people in there were appointed by Trump himself. It is the fact that those people, the people he put in power, were literally tossing out the fraud allegations whenever they actually crept up to the Supreme Court. This is a hostile witness principle. People who have every reason to want Trump to stay in office are going, no, that's not how things work. That should be one of your indicators that maybe, just maybe, things aren't actually as cut and dry as you think. Or at least as cut and dry as Kaitlin Bennet thinks.
Those are awfully specific, YouTube. Effectively, what they are...
They're awfully specific because they have to be. They're awfully specific because that's what a good regulation on a website should be specific. If you make it too vague and vapid, then you're able to overreach. If you make it specific, then you're able to actually argue as to why you are engaging in particular policy information and why you are engaging in particular acts on your website. That's what you want. It's called transparency. But Kaitlin doesn't like transparency.
saying is that if you use YouTube to allege that anyone but Joe Biden won the 2020 election, you will be banned. Even before they
Actually, it didn't say that you would be banned. It said the video would be removed and that they had banned accounts. It does not immediately say you will be banned for doing so, simply that the video will be removed, which likely means that a video would be removed and then the striking process would be engaged. You'd get one strike, then you'd get another strike, and then at the third strike, you're out. I've had strikes on my videos on YouTube. So I'm just throwing that out there, Kaitlin. You can sit here and be the victim. You can sit here and be the snowflake, but it doesn't change material reality.
They announced this policy update, it was already abundantly clear that YouTube was trying to stop the spread of pro-Trump content. In case you haven't noticed, our views on YouTube have recently been a mere fraction of what we were getting just a month ago.
Yeah, it's been happening with me as well, Kaitlin. All political content has had this issue lately. Is it just conservative censorship, or is it that either the algorithm is moving things away from strictly political content, or what I would rather believe is the case, because this means that I actually have some ownership in this, there's something about your content that needs improving. Because that's what's happening with mine, I think. My content needs improving. So I'm not getting as many views as I used to. I'd rather own that instead of saying, YouTube is shitting on me.
Needless to say, it's going to be very difficult for me to keep uploading videos here to YouTube. What am I even allowed to talk about anymore besides the weather?
Talk about the things you like. Talk about the things you love. Talk about what you did during the day. Talk about economic policy. Talk about what Joe Biden's presidency is going to do and how it's going to affect you in a positive or a negative way. Talk about the things that you enjoyed from Trump's presidency. Talk about the reasons why you think the vague platitudes that conservatives generally stand on are somehow axiomatic and worth keeping around. You have so many things you can talk about. Talk about your favorite political authors. Talk about fucking Thomas Sowell. I know that that's one of the people you're going to grab because he's a black economist who argues for conservatism. He's literally the perfect token for you. You can talk about all that shit. You have so much you can talk about. If your argument is that, if I can't talk about voter fraud, what can I even talk about? Then I think your issue with your views might actually be a lack of creativity, Kaitlin. I think that's what it might come down to. I've got to manage 2 to 3 topics almost every day for a stream to talk about. Things I've got to research beforehand, things I've got to figure out how I'm going to cover them, and then I get onto the stream and I talk about them. It's hard, but it is not so hard to be creative in what you're going to cover. Just look at the news. It's not hard, Kaitlin. You're upset that you can't talk about your pet issue right now. And then using that to say, well, what can I even talk about? This is like a disgraced lover who just received a boundary and is suddenly going, well, then what can I do? You told me I can't have sex with you when you say no. Now what can I do? That's not how this works, Kaitlin.
This is why it's more important than ever for you to join us over at libertyhangout.tv, where I can actually speak freely and not have to worry about censorship. We are currently having our biggest sale ever for Christmas, and I highly encourage you guys to...
Okay, we're not going to look at the freaking sale. Okay, now that we've gotten into a sale, Kaitlin, we're not doing this. Kate's unsafe space. Imagine the virtue signaling.
Sign up for our annual plan, which you can get that I could upload every single video I make to YouTube. But with the way things are going, the majority of my content going forward will likely have to be uploaded at libertyhangout.tv. I've also...
Imagine that... we're gonna get it. We're gonna get to poke fun at Parler. But imagine that. My views are so controversial that I will no longer be able to publish them on YouTube. Gee, I wonder what views those would be, Kaitlin. I'm not gonna pay money to libertyhangout.tv to actually see what goes on there, but I am so curious if anybody has actually gone onto libertyhangout.tv to see the things that are said there, because I'm not gonna lie. It strikes me that's probably where you're going to get a lot of your fun Holocaust denialism. Not that she hasn't engaged in that publicly before.
Also moved over to Parler and Rumble, and
She's moved over to Parler. Man, can you imagine what it's like to be Kaitlin Bennet on Parler right now? Oh wait, you can't. Nobody's on Parler right now. At least not for right now. Apparently they're moving to Russian servers, which is very patriotic, I have to say. Really Putin the patriotism back on Parler.
I urge you guys, very quickly, go follow us there as well. Unfortunately, YouTube's policy update doesn't just end there, of course. They tell us in plain text what their goal with all of this is. They write, over 70% of recommendations on election-related topics came from authoritative news sources, and the top recommended videos and channels for election-related content were primarily authoritative news. In fact, the top 10 authoritative news channels were recommended over 14 times more than the top 10 non-authoritative news channels on election-related content. So who exactly do they consider to be an authoritative news source? We have ABC News, USA Today, NBC, Fox News, CBS. Gee, I wonder why they would consider these outlets authoritative.
Probably because they've been doing this for years. Like, you got Fox on there. You got your mainstream media source that's for the right wing.
Surely they would not have an agenda, right? And here's where their policy update gets a little funny. Despite these encouraging results, we recognize that there's always more to do. For example, while problematic misinformation represents a fraction of 1% of what's watched on YouTube in the US, we know we can bring that number down even more. So this misinformation, as they call it, is so dangerous to our democracy that they have to outright ban it. Yet it only makes up a fraction of 1% of what's watched on YouTube.
So let's go ahead and say and point out why this is being done, Kaitlin. Okay, if you don't know, okay, Kaitlin, let me make it very simple for you. If a conspiracy theorist comes up with a very, what's the word for it? Convincing conspiracy theory. And this conspiracy theory involves the Jews, if you're going to go ahead and go the anti-Semitic route. And so you are a fraction of this ideology, but you have a platform, and you use this platform to magnify the audience that is watching this. There's a thing called stochastic terrorism. These are random acts of violence that are carried out because a social media influencer, a presidential candidate, an ex-president, any number of people have influenced someone to engage in an act of violence. It is hard to predict how this is going to happen, which is why we use the term stochastic. But stochastic terrorism generally ends up breeding, well, shit like what happened at the Unite the Right rally, where we actually got a murder there. Shit that happened at the Capitol Hill protests, which turned into a riot, which turned into all kinds of nasty shit. So maybe the fact that we have real-world examples of what happens when we allow even these 1% of opinions to flourish on a platform. You see, that's the difference here, is that it's not that you're not allowed to talk about them, Kaitlin. You can talk about them all you want. You even pointed out that there were alternative sources you could talk about them on. It's about a platform that has its own terms of service saying that it doesn't want those opinions on its platform. They don't want Holocaust denial. They don't want anti-Semitism. They don't want Nazi shit. They don't want people who are from the alt-right spouting their nonsense. They don't want that. And why would you want that? If you are actively welcoming these people in simply because everybody should have their own voice, they have their own voice. They've got 1,000 public forums available to them that are not YouTube, the private corporation. These ideas proliferate. They gain traction in small circles and then grow. If you would like an example of this, I would like to direct you to QAnon. I would like to direct you to flat earthers. I would like to direct you to loose change 9/11 conspiracy theorists, of which I used to be one. If you want an example of how these fraction of 1% ideas can spread and become harmful. Material reality generally dictates what types of policy you should engage in on any platform, be it political or business. And the material reality is that these types of thought processes, there we go. These types of thought processes, when allowed to proliferate, when allowed to blossom, go from a fraction of 1% to 2%, to 4%, to 30%. Like what has happened with the election fraud results thing. The fact that we have plenty of people in power in the United States now that agree with the QAnon conspiracies. That is the end result of not dealing with unfactual and frankly harmful information. That's the material reality. And you can sit here and go, well, it's my free speech. It's my free speech. Then go to a different platform. Y'all are the same fuckers that argued that the cake baker should not be forced to bake his gay cake. Your Nazi shit is the gay cake. YouTube is the cake baker. Go to a different cake shop, Kaitlin.
That's like cutting celery out of your diet because you're getting fat. But you know what's really ironic about all of this? Who were the ones misleading people about the outcome of the 2016 election? Oh, it was NBC, ABC News, CNN, CBS News, PBS, MSNBC, The Washington Post, The New York Times, and all of the other mainstream media outlets.
So, a couple of things. One, didn't we actually end up finding that there actually was issues with the 2016 election? Again, not so much that it would have changed the outcome of anything, but I believe we found that there was actual Russian interference. It generally played into advertisements and stuff like that, but the fact that that stuff existed meant it got reported on. Though, in any case, this does show another point, though. There is one thing that I can agree with Kaitlin on, and that is that legacy media should not gain all the power it has on YouTube. Because it's just as prone to all of these issues as a small independent person would be. Not because of Russia hoax shit or any of that, but just in general, the fact that there are people who try to cover politics and stuff like that, and then they get completely subverted by CBS. Hell, I remember when I made a video about BLM, and I used footage directly from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. I used footage that was available on YouTube, and that video was taken down on my channel, and it was seen as problematic because it displayed violence. Except when it was mainstream news outlets, they were allowed to display the exact same violence, because that's where I got the clips from. They were allowed to display it carte blanche. Perfectly fine. No issue. If there's one thing me and Kaitlin can agree on, it is that legacy media has undue power on what is supposed to be a platform of and for individuals. However, like with many things that happen with right-wing grifters and people like Kaitlin who are so thoroughly entrenched in this kind of thinking that they may as well just be called Nazis, we can agree on some base things, but the way in which we manifest our actions after that end up being completely different. My issue ends up boiling down to large corporations bad, whereas your issue ends up boiling down to my voice isn't being heard and I want to deny the Holocaust. So this is the difference between a left-wing and a right-wing approach to this, I assume. One of us wants to actually tackle the systemic problem the cause of the disease. And one of us wants the disease to proliferate so long as the disease infects our targets and not us.
Yet how many of their videos did YouTube take down for the lies they told about Russian meddling in the 2016 election? 0.
Yeah, because all we have to do is find a single point of evidence, which we did, about Russia meddling in the election. A single point is all we need. Them paying for an advertisement for a particular candidate, them pushing something on YouTube, them pushing something on Facebook, things of which we did find. All of that comes down to say, yes, meddling happened. You only need one point of data when your point is, did meddling happen, yes or no? You don't have to have enough to show that it was significant. You just have to have enough to show that it existed.
But let's trust these same outlets to definitely tell us the truth about what happened in this election, right? With this, we need to start saying good.
So I need to go ahead and say, Kaitlin, with all of that, with all those news outlets, with all of them reporting on the election as it happened, did it change anything? That's my question. Did it change anything? Because if you're whining that they were allowed to say a thing that you don't agree with, and then arguing that you should be allowed to say the same thing, you kind of have to bite the bullet and accept the fact that your opinion wouldn't change anything either. It wouldn't. If the largest media corporation saying this thing didn't change anything about Trump's election, then it wouldn't change anything about Biden's election here. And I know you guys are free speech warriors who believe that you should be allowed to say whatever you want, including, fire in a movie theater. I understand that that actually has some issues as an analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway. It comes down to the fact that it doesn't change anything. Did fraud, Jamie Miner has it right in the chat, did fraud happen in the 2020 election? Yes, it did. We found various places where it did happen, like in Georgia. Was there enough to overturn the results? No. YouTube strictly said that you can say that there were fishy things. You can say that there's fraud. You can say that X, Y, and Z happened in the election results. But what you can't say is that the election was entirely rigged in Biden's favor. The election was screwy. The election was fraudulent completely through and through. All that stuff is stuff that you're not able to say. And you're upset that you're not able to lie. And I get it. When you live on a throne of lies, when you sleep on a bed of lies, it's very upsetting when you are not allowed to engage in the same kind of rhetoric anymore. But go ahead. Try it on Parler. I'm sure it'll work much better.
Goodbye to YouTube, since they said goodbye to us a long time ago.
She says she's saying goodbye to YouTube, but she still uploads videos to YouTube since this video was uploaded. Imagine that.
Join us over at libertyhangout.tv to watch Kaitlin Bennet Uncensored.
That sounds like a porno I want nothing of. And that's about as far as we're going to get in there, because now we are getting into the shilling part of her video, which I have no reason to proliferate. So, what can we conclude here? Well, I think it's easy enough to conclude that Kaitlin Bennet, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter that you believe really hard that Donald Trump should be your king. It doesn't matter that you believe really hard that Florida should secede from the nation so that Trump can be emperor of Florida. It doesn't matter that you think that we should be a monarchy. Your beliefs don't affect material reality. In fact, as another conservative speaker has said before, facts don't care about your feelings. They don't. And again, since Kaitlin Bennet has pointed out that she is leaving YouTube,
My name is Kaitlin Bennet.
I don't want your opening. That also sounds like a bad porno. But considering that after this, she has uploaded several videos afterwards, I don't think Kaitlin Bennet's hopping off YouTube. I think maybe she's started to understand that YouTube is the ubiquitous platform for video sharing. The only thing second to it right now is Facebook as a video sharing platform. So if you're not on here, then your ideas, as shitty as they are, simply will not proliferate. So going to your conservative echo chamber, while that might feel better for you, it doesn't actually change reality. It doesn't change people's minds. It does nothing. All you're doing is going to speak to the people who already agree with you, which I assume is not your goal. If your goal is to reach liberals, if your goal is to reach leftists, then you don't do it by abandoning the platform where the leftists and liberals are. That said, that is as much as we can cover of Kaitlin Bennet right now, unless I wanted to delve into her Twitter, which I don't want to do at the moment, even though I know she's having a lovely meltdown over there over Biden's inauguration. So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Go ahead and share it with your friends if you really, really enjoyed it. Go ahead and check out the links in the description. I have links to Patreon and other places there where you can support me if you really want to. And thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to move on to the next topic.